Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to our channel. The date is the 22nd of December 2025. This is our weekly Tawheed Halaqah. We are on session 61 of, and the book is volume 3, part 2, chapter 2, page 186. The chapter title is an analytical exploration of the story of Abraham and his people. In commencing our examination of this narrative, which encompasses profound wisdom and critical knowledge, it is most fitting to begin with a detailed study of the early life of Ibrahim alayhi salam, as expressed in the divine word. He the Exalted has said, "Remember when Abraham said to his father Azar, 'How can you take idols as gods? I see that you and your people have clearly gone astray.' In this way, we showed our Abraham Allah's mighty dominion over the heavens and the earth, so that he might be a firm believer. When the night grew dark over him, he saw a star and said, 'This is my Lord.' But when it set, he said, 'I do not like things that set.' And when he saw the moon rising, he said, 'This is my Lord.' But when it too set, he said, 'If my Lord does not guide me, I shall be one of those who go astray.' Then he saw the sun rising and cried, 'This is my Lord, this is greater.' But when the sun set, he said, 'My people, I disown all that you worship beside Allah. I have turned my face as a true believer towards him who created the heavens and the earth. I am not one of the mushrikeen,' polytheists. His people argued with him, and he said, 'How can you argue with me about Allah when He has guided me? I do not fear anything you associate with Him, unless my Lord wills. Nothing can happen. My Lord encompasses everything in His knowledge. How can you not take heed? Why should I fear what you associate with Him? Why do you not fear me to associate with him things for which he has sent you no authority? Tell me if you know the answer. Which side has more right to feel secure? It is those who have faith and do not mix their faith with idolatry who will be secure, and it is they who are rightly guided. Such was the argument we gave to Abraham against his people. We raise in rank whoever we will. Your Lord is all wise, all knowing. And that's from Quran, Surah 6, 79 to 83. Okay. And the Arabic has been omitted from the text for brevity. Further to this, the glorious and majestic word of Allah has declared, "Long ago we bestowed right judgment on Abraham. We knew him well. He said to his father and his people, 'What are these images to which you are so devoted?' They replied, 'We found our forefathers worshipping them.' He said, 'You and your forefathers have clearly, and you and your fathers have clearly gone astray.' They asked, 'Have you brought us the truth, or are you playing about?' He said, 'Listen, your true Lord is the Lord of the heavens and the earth, He who created them, and I am a witness to this. By Allah, I shall certainly plot against your idols as soon as you have turned your backs.' He broke them all into pieces, but left the biggest one for them to return. They said, 'Who has done this to our gods? How wicked he must be.' Some said, 'We heard a youth called Abraham talking about them.' They said, 'Bring him before the eyes of the people, so that they may witness his trial.' They asked, 'Was it you, Abraham, who did this to our gods?' He said, 'No, it was done by the biggest of them, this one. Ask them if they can talk.' They turned to another, saying, 'It is you who are in the wrong.' But then they lapsed again and said, 'You know very well these gods cannot speak.' Abraham said, 'How can you worship what can neither benefit nor harm you instead of Allah? Shame on you and the things you worship instead of Allah. Have you no sense?' They said, 'Burn him and avenge your gods if you are going to do the right thing.' But we said, 'Fire be cool and safe for Abraham.' They planned to harm him, but we made them suffer the greatest loss. We saved him and Lot and sent them to the land we blessed for all people. The first verse here, and that's Quran 21, 51 to 71. The first verse here only mentions the early bestowal of wisdom upon Ibrahim salam, without elaborating on the initial consequences of this endowment, followed by a significant temporal leap to the confrontation with his people. Thus, the context of Surah Anbiya, chapter 21, provides a summarized account of Ibrahim's early life in his birthplace, followed by a substantial leap to the final confrontation with his father and people. In contrast, Surah Al-An'am offers a detailed account of the outcomes of his rushd or maturity in the early stages. The Quran corroborates itself and clarifies its own meanings. Hence, a meticulous and enlightened contemplation of what is elaborated in one instance and summarized in another provides us with the correct sequence of events and allows us to extract valuable truths and lessons. Firstly, Ibrahim alayhi salam who was endowed with rushd, began by questioning the religion of his father and people. He became increasingly convinced that they were in manifest error, as his father, who was involved in this initial confrontation, could provide no evidence that these idols were merely stone statues to the naked eye, represented in any way the celestial beings they claimed as deities. It is evident that the supposed deities of Ibrahim's people were the planets, stars, the suns, and the moon, as demonstrated by his contemplation of these celestial bodies to the exclusion of others. When he began his period of observation and reflection, this is conclusively supported by modern historical and archaeological studies, a fact long known to both ancient and contemporary Muslim scholars. For example, as stated in Fath al-Bari by Ibn Hajar, Abu Bakr al-Razi mentions in his Ahkam the people of Babylon were Sabians, who worshipped the seven planets, naming them as gods and believing that they were the forces behind everything in the universe. They constructed idols in the names of these planets, each with a temple where offerings were made according to what they believed would please that particular deity, such as specific prayers and offering incense. These were the people to whom Ibrahim, peace be upon him, was sent. Their sciences were centered on the rulings of the stars, and their sorcerers employed various forms of magic, attributing these practices to the actions of the planets to conceal the deception. It is mentioned in the works of the esteemed Sheikh Abdurrahman ibn Yahya al-Muallimi al-Yamani. It has been said that the people of Ibrahim salam worshipped tamathil, statues, figurines as representations, reminders, or symbols of the celestial bodies. And this is supported by the story of Ibrahim regarding the stars and his statement, "This is my Lord," followed by his declaration, "But when it is too set, when it's too set, he said, if my Lord does not guide me, I shall be of those who go astray." That's 678. This indicates that their shirk was related to the celestial bodies. Subsequently, he said, "I do not fear anything you associate with him. Unless my Lord wills, nothing can happen." And then in brackets 680, which indicates that they feared their associates and tried to frighten Ibrahim with them. This would be unlikely or impossible regarding the Asnam, for as mentioned earlier, they had acknowledged or nearly acknowledged that they offered neither harm nor benefit. This is further evidenced by the known religion of the ancient Babylonians, who were Sabians, to whom Ibrahim salam was sent, that they deified Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and Mercury. They believed that Saturn had a form depicted as a human head with bird wings, and Mars had the form of a lion with a human head and bird wings, and the same applied to the others. They would create statues of these imagined forms, such as the body of an animal with a human head and bird wings, and worship these statues. What further supports that this was the belief of the people of Ibrahim salam, is that Allah is what Allah the Almighty reported about him in his saying, "Then he looked up to the stars, he said, I am sick." That's 37, 88 to 89. I'm not sure what that. By looking at the stars, he led them to believe that he had learned from them that he would fall ill. When he said, I am sick, he meant I will become sick. The context here is his observation of the stars, leading them to this belief. He spoke the truth in saying that he would become sick, for every human being is susceptible to illness. What has been reported that this statement is among the permissible ambiguities is Allah knows best related to his observation of the stars, leading them to believe that he had derived from them that he would become sick, while in reality he had not gained such knowledge from them. He only led them to believe so. Is this when he started the conversation saying that this is my Lord, and then when it set? Is this what it relates to? And when he concludes it saying that if I'm not if you know, I can't remember if I'm not guided or something, do you know? Because it references it says I am sick.
That's المعلم talking. This his text.
Oh, I see.
It's
Okay.
not my
This
text.
okay. The
He's trying
suggestion
to
of
justify how can Ibrahim say I'm sick. He was not sick. He was just
uh,
giving them the impression that that he believed that he admit that so that they can dispel and they can complete his contemplation and things like that. He's trying to justify he was really not sick because the stars or the gods could not harm him in reality, but it's allowed to use such ways in argumentation,
uh-huh,
pretend or something else without being completely untruthful. They want
uh-huh,
to defend Ibrahim that Ibrahim is not a liar. That's all what he is.
uh-huh,
Well, this is not a main issue. There are many very ways to deal with something like that.
uh-huh, uh-huh,
And the Quran could have been very abridged a very long sentence that, okay, just assume your deity made me sick. So just go now. Let me see how things develop or something like that.
uh-huh. This
As a
suggests
matter of fact, in another place and another story, I think it's another place in the Quran, I'm not sure now, or someone expanded elsewhere, is that they go that specific town or city where he come from seems to be Ur in the Chaldean land that's between Basra and Kufa nowadays. It's obviously extinct that they were going outside the city for or the village for celebration or something like that. And they were told him, "Come with us." I said, "No, I'm sick. I have to
uh,
stay back." That's in the occasion we hammered their gods and destroyed them. So we use that as a pretext to stay back. Nobody is staying in the city, where he then hammered the gods and destroyed them and the idols. Okay.
this suggestion of ambiguity is what is meant here, and Allah knows best. The verse indicates that observing the stars and deducing future events from them was known to the people, and from here, and Allah knows best, they defied the stars. Now, this is your statement. Thus, I would argue that the Wahhabi background of Sheikh al-Muallimi negatively affected his judgment, particularly in his inability to distinguish between a timthal, statue, and a sanam, idol.
Mm.
His comments regarding the statues as representations, reminders, or symbols is incorrect.
Do we discuss
Rather,
that? You remember we discussed that
yeah,
previously? Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
rather a correct formulation would be that they worshipped asnam, which were statues, and they served as being substitutes for and are closely associated with the celestial beings, celestial entities, e.g., the planets. Further to this, his comments regarding unlikely or impossible regarding the Islam is a further error. A better, more astute formulation would be that this is impossible regarding statues, for they, as previously mentioned, admitted or nearly admitted that these statues neither bring forth harm nor benefit. Further clarification on this matter will be provided in due course. Also mentioned in the works of Sheikh al-Muallimi, continue the text, and why then did they defy the planets? The aforementioned commentary also notes that they attributed to Jupiter titles such as the Great Lord, the King of the Gods, the Glorious God, the Judge, the Eternal, the Judge of the Gods, the Lord of Wars, the King of the Heavens, the Great Lord of Eternity, the Lord of the Universe, the Chief of the Gods, and the Chief and the Gods of Gods, the God of Gods. To Mars they ascribed titles such as the God of War, Hunting, the War and Hunting, the great man, the mighty hero, the king of war, the destroyer, and the tyrant of the gods. As for Venus, they referred to her as the queen of gods and goddesses. Mercury was called the unparalleled lord of lords. The author of the tafsir deduced from these apparently contradictory descriptions that they were employing hyperbolic praise when referring to these celestial bodies. In any case, their descriptions of these celestial bodies clearly indicate that they believed these bodies had the ability to govern and manage affairs. The question that remains is in what manner did they believe these celestial bodies exercise governance and control? In Al-Milal wal-Nihal by Ash-Sharastari, it is stated, according to them, i.e., the Sabians, Al-Ibda, the unique creation act of the Lord, exalted is He, was the origination of Ar-Ruhaniyat, the spiritual beings, after which He delegated the affairs of the upper world to them. The specific actions of these spiritual beings was to set Al-Hayakil, the celestial bodies in motion, and then they in turn was delegated the governance of the lower world. This is akin to someone constructing a workshop, establishing its pillars such as the agent, the material, and the form, and then delegating the work to apprentices. In Shara al-Maqasid, it is further elaborated upon. It is said, they claim that each celestial sphere possesses a soul. This refers to the belief held by the practitioners of talismans that each celestial sphere has a ruh kulli, universal soul, that governs its affairs, from which many other souls emanate. For example, the throne, meaning al-falaq al-azam, the greatest sphere, has a soul that governs all matters within it, referred to as al-nafs al-quliya, the universal soul, or ar-rum al-azam, the greatest soul, from which many other souls emanate, connected to the various parts and extremities of the throne. This is similar to how al-nafs al-natiqa, the rational soul, governs the human body, possessing natural, animalistic, and psychic faculties corresponding to each organ. This interpretation aligns with the verses on the day when the spirit and the angels stand in rows, that's 78:38, and you will see the angels surrounding the throne, glorifying their Lord with praise, that's 39:75, and so on for the other celestial spheres. They also affirm that each degree of the celestial sphere has a soul, with whose influence manifests when the sun enters that degree, and similarly for each day, each hour, as well as for the seas, mountains, deserts, urban areas, and the various types of plants and animals. This is analogous to what is mentioned in the religious text regarding the Malak al-Arzaq, angels of provision. Angel of provision, Malak al-Jibal, the angel of the mountains, Malak al-Bihar, the angel of the seas, Malak al-Amtar, angel of the rain, and Malak al-Maut, angel of death, and so on. In sum, just as each human body is endowed with a governing soul, they affirm that each type of entity and even species has a soul that governs it, referred to as at-taba, at-tam, the perfect nature of that type, which preserves it from calamities and fears and manifests its influence within the species in the same way that the human soul manifests its influence within the individual. Now, this is you. I say it appears that they believe these celestial bodies to be animate, as well as was the opinion of certain philosophers who held that the planets possess souls, whether these planetary souls, according to them, were of angelic origin or otherwise. Allah knows best. Oh, I think that's all his statement. Okay, now this is your statement now. Broadly, I would argue that this is acceptable in general terms. However, I would like to remind the reader of what we mentioned in the previous chapter on the Sabians. The Mushrikeen idolaters among the philosophers of Harran, as well as the Jandishapur and Edessa, adopted the title of Sabians as a means of deception towards the Muslims to benefit from the favorable treatment extended to the people of the book. Moreover, their statements about the beliefs of the Chaldeans represented a philosophized development of the original doctrines, possibly intermingled with the ideas of the Greeks. The most likely scenario, as indicated by the texts and artifacts of the Chaldeans themselves, is that they did not originally have a central supreme deity above or beyond the planets. It is more likely that the planets, in their view, were eternal and uncreated. It is also possible that Jupiter was considered their chief, a leader among equals, rather than a lord over created beings. This characterization of Jupiter aligns more with the Greek understanding than with the Chaldean, and this point requires further scrutiny or greater detailed examination, as was already quoted earlier from Tafsir al-Razi. Continue with the text. Thirdly, as it is closer to explaining who they are, is that they are a people who worship the planets. Thereafter, there are two viewpoints regarding this. Firstly, that the creator of existence is Allah, may He be glorified, except that He ordered reverence for the planets, designating them as a direction of prayer, supplication, and veneration. The second view, that Allah, may He be glorified, created the heavens and the planets, the latter being responsible for management of worldly affairs, which includes matters of good, evil, health, and sickness. And He is the creator of it. Therefore, mankind has a necessity to show reverence to them because they are the entities governing the temporal plane. However, they all worship Allah, may He be glorified. This belief is attributed to the Chaldeans, to whom the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam came to, rejecting and refuting their belief. Now, this is your statement. Here, I would argue the claim that the celestial bodies worship Allah is questionable and likely a falsehood which was fabricated by the idol worshippers of Haran, as mentioned earlier. This is because it has not been definitively established that these people recognize a central deity to whom the subordinate deities referred, either by birth or creation. This Abrahamic doubt is not akin to the skepticism of the agnostics or those indifferent to the pursuit of truth. Rather, it is a doubt of one seeking knowledge and certainty. When he attains a certain level of particular knowledge, he seeks a higher level, as Allah the Exalted informs us in His words. And when Abraham said, "My Lord, show me how you give life to the dead," he said, "Do you not believe me? Do you not believe then?" "Yes," said Ibrahim, "but just to put my heart at rest." So Allah said, "Take 4 birds and train them to come back to you. Then place them on separate hilltops, call them back, and they will come flying to you. Know that Allah is all-powerful and wise." Now, Surah Baqarah 260. Thus, he was a believer who was certain, but he sought to ascend from the level of ilm al-yaqeen, knowledge of certainty, to the level of ayn al-yaqeen, vision of certainty. Our Prophet ﷺ commented on this by saying, this is the hadith, Ahmed ibn Salih narrated to us, Ibn Wahab narrated to us, he said, Yunus reported to me from Ibn Shihab, from Abu Salama ibn Abdurrahman, and Sa'id ibn Musaib from Abu Huraira, that the Messenger of Allah said, "We have more cause to be in doubt than Abraham when he said, 'My Lord, show me how you give life to the dead.' He said, 'Do you not believe then?' 'Yes,' said Abraham, 'but just to put my heart at rest.' May Allah bestow His mercy upon him, upon Lot. He wanted to have a powerful support. If I were to stay in prison for an equal period to the stay of Joseph, and then the offer of freedom came to me, then I would have accepted it."
That's praising these prophets, because some people may think, Ibrahim was doubting us. I said, no, we deserve to be more doubtful than Ibrahim anyway. And he mentioned the ayah. And then he spoke about Lot when he said to his people, when they attacked the house and sieged the house to extract the beautiful young boys there, to commit sodomy with them, possibly by force or whatever it is. He said he turned, when he gave up any hope that he would be able to resist, he turned to the angels who are appeared as young, beautiful men, which obviously luxurious and so on, do not look like fighters. He said, "I can't fight with you. I cannot protect you, and do not look like any fighters who should be giving me support. If I could find any support or lean back to a strong support." And the Prophet, may Allah have mercy on him, his back was to a strong support. To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was his supporter. So he was, but in the moment of desperation, he uttered this, because what we see is that he's finished. He cannot do anything. And the third one is there's just pure praise for Yusuf. That Yusuf, when the king said, "Yeah, get me that young man so I can talk to him." The messenger who came to him, he sent them back. They refused to get out of prison until his innocence is publicly established. Say, "Go to your lord, to your king, to the messenger, and ask him to scrutinize that case, that perjury and fake case they brought against me." And then the king scrutinized, and everyone admitted that they committed perjury, and Yusuf is innocent. He did not commit any. Did not pursue the wife of the chief of guardians or the prime minister, whatever the Al-Aziz was. And then Yusuf responded. That's obvious pure praise for Yusuf. Messenger Allah said, "If I were in place of Yusuf, such a long imprisonment, I would be rushed out." That's obviously praising Yusuf. That such a stand is very rare, that someone who has been so many years in prison, and then suddenly the ruler say, "You are pardoned, come out." Say, "No, I'm not going to go out until my innocence is established publicly." So shows a high level of self-confidence and self-respect. So, and shows the humility of Allah. As I said, if I were in the place of you, I would have responded without making such a stand. Just to teach the Sahaba that don't think that that I am going to put myself above the other person. I similar to them or even lower than them. You should learn that by yourself, for yourself. In another occasion, he also instructed, there was a dispute between Abu Bakr and one Jew. The Jew by the one who gave preference, gave Musa preference over all creation, and I think Abu Bakr got excited and slapped him, saying, "Do you mean that he's given preference even over Muhammad alayhi salam?" And the Jew complained to Muhammad alayhi salam, and Muhammad rebuked Abu Bakr. The nation did not say what he said to the Jew, and told Abu Bakr, "You should not have said that. Don't make distinction and elevate messengers above each other, except what Allah has clearly said, who is above the other one, who is not." And in the Quran, there's nowhere that he mentions specifically that Prophet X is above Prophet Y or vice versa. He said generally, these messengers, we have lifted them various levels above each other, and give them some set of preference, some another preferences. For example, he gave Musa, he spoke to Musa directly. That's a special preference. No one who's been spoken directly frequently and continuously like Musa. And he gave Isa ibn Maryam such evidence which no other prophet has gotten. And so that is just in this matter. And this just to clarify the hadith, if someone say, what does it mean? This hadith does not seem to be clear, but it shows that Ibrahim is having an investigative and analytical mind. Yeah. Okay, carry on. Yeah, continue.
Naturally, Ibrahim alayhi salam had no evidence to suggest that these celestial bodies were themselves divine beings. Rather, his father and his people held on to the inherited traditions of their forefathers, which were merely unfounded stories and baseless claims, rather to the assertions of others who have not provided irrefutable proof of their infallibility, is a weak argument, one that Ibrahim, who was endowed with sound judgment by Allah, would not accept. This is an approach that should be taken by anyone of sound intellect. True guidance is the correct use of sound reasoning, which is essentially rationality. Whoever makes a claim without providing evidence is a liar, and whoever firmly believes in something without having evidence is a misguided liar. Therefore, Ibrahim said to his father, "I see that you and your people have clearly gone astray, even if their claim itself was correct based on other evidence." At the same time, there was no proof that these celestial bodies were not divine beings. So what is the truth and what is the correct stance? Here the grace of Allah intervenes with Ibrahim alayhi salam, as he had earned it by exerting all effort in using his intellect correctly. Allah inspired him to observe, monitor, and contemplate the dominion of the heavens and the earth, perhaps to discover if there was anything in them worthy of being considered divine, particularly these celestial bodies that his people claimed were divine beings. Remember when, this is the Surah 6, 74 to 81 to be read now. Remember when Abraham said to his father, Azar, "How can you take idols as gods? I see that you and your people have clearly gone astray." In this way, we showed Abraham Allah's mighty dominion over the heavens and the earth, so that he might be a firm believer. When the night grew dark over him, he saw a star and said, "This is my Lord." But when it set, he said, "I do not like things that set." And when he saw the moon rising, he said, "This is my Lord." But when it's too set, he said, "If my Lord does not guide me, I shall be one of those who go astray." Then he saw the sun rising and cried, "This is my Lord, this is greater." But when the sun set, he said, "My people, I disown all that you worship besides Allah. I have turned my face as a true believer towards him who created the heavens and the earth. I am not one of the polytheists." His people argued with him, and he said, "How can you argue with me about Allah when he has guided me? I do not fear anything you associate with him. Unless my Lord wills, nothing can happen." In brackets, my Lord encompasses everything in his knowledge. How can you not take heed? Why should I fear that you associate with him? Why do you not fear to associate with him things for which he has sent you no authority? Tell me, if you know the answer, which side has more right to feel secure? Continuing with your text. Given the above, this leads to several important conclusions. This reflection and reasoning by Ibrahim alayhi salam were genuine attempts to reach the truth of divinity through observation and contemplation. It was not merely a part of his debate with his people. In this way we showed Abraham Allah's mighty dominion is a clear indication that this contemplation was the transition from doubt to certainty. This necessarily implies that he had not yet received prophethood. Prophethood and divine selection came thereafter. We should recall that what we established in the second chapter of this book, where he said, in any case, the necessity of reason dictates that for anyone whom Allah appoints as a prophet, even as a favor and an act of divine selection, without being tasked with conveying a message, it is imperative that such a person knows with unwavering certainty that he is a prophet and that Allah has chosen him, and that the one who selected him is Allah, the one, the eternal, the living, the sustainer, the creator of the heavens and the earth, the Lord of all worlds, the one who does what he wills, and who has power over all things, creating whatever he wills and choosing as he wills, and who is all-knowing. This must be made known to him by Allah. Otherwise, it would be as if Allah was saying, I have made you a prophet, but have not informed you, or I have made you a prophet without telling you who I am, which would be a contradiction and confusion, something that even the most rational humans would reject, let alone the Lord of all worlds. Further in the verse, when he saw the moon rising, also implies that his contemplation was in search of certainty and guidance, and a way to emerge from doubt and misguidance. Broadly, this is the argument of Imam At-Tabari, as he explained in his tafsir. Abu Ja'far said in Allah's report about what Ibrahim said when the moon set, if my Lord does not guide me, I shall be one of those who go astray. There is evidence of the error of those people's statements, and that the correct view is to acknowledge Allah's report about him and disregard anything else. And that's Tafsir At-Tabari.
Because there
He
was,
was correct.
but there was a controversy about Ibrahim discussing with the stars rising, setting, etc. Some people claimed he was not really contemplating for himself to achieve certainty. Under the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, behind the veil, obviously, where everything happens with the guidance of Allah ta'ala and his permission anyway. So they thought that he was in an argument with his people. But this just at face, you will not be watching the stars until they set, and your people are standing there waiting for you to do the argument, and then next day waiting the moon and so on. That sound illogical, but Tabari got it right and say, especially when he commented outside the moon setting, I seem to be, I'm not finding my Lord. If my Lord, my true Lord, does not guide me, I will be going astray. And Tabari regard that as definitely indicating that Ibrahim was doing the search for himself. He's not arguing with his people. It's not a debate or demonstration or something like that, which is true. I think that's the best point of view. Until that moment, he was not yet a prophet. So he reached this knowledge by rational consideration only. And that's the meaning at the beginning. I wonder why I didn't translate the word rushd. Rushd is in Arab word, the best translation is rationality based on reaching a certain maturity and maturity age. Rushd. Or use the same thing for orphans. When they come out of age, then test them to see if they have achieved sufficient rationality to take care of their own money by themselves. That's the rushd. Sufficient rationality and mental competence to manage your affairs by yourself. But not just coming out of age alone is not enough. Just getting 15, 16 years old, maybe some people need more time until they get 20, 25. But in any case, no way you can test before coming out of age. But after coming out of age, for women by menstruating and for men by wet dreams and things like that, then it is the time to start testing and looking, can they manage their own affair by themselves? When they show really capability, then you transfer the money, which that's addressing the manager of orphans' wealth. Then you can give their money, hand over to them, obviously with the usual technicality of witnessing and writing down and all of these things, like final accounting, etc. So this is the rushd. Best is to be rationality, and tarsheed is rationalization. So say this industrial process seems to be a little bit too complicated. Maybe we can simplify it and make it more efficient. Tarsheed, rationalizing the process, etc. Okay. So that argument of Tabari is really very good here. That him say, if my Lord does not guide me, then I will be going astray. It proves almost conclusively that Ibrahim was really contemplating and analyzing things in rational and contemplating way. not arguing with his people like some other scholars claimed. Carry on.
He was correct and thorough in this, although some have objected, suggesting that Ibrahim's words might have been out of humility, expressing his need for guidance as befits the stance of one who prays. This is baseless doubt that is refuted by the context itself, as he continued his inquiry and contemplation regarding the state of the sun. Then after the sun set, he proclaimed loudly, "My people, I disown all that you worship beside Allah." He made this declaration with full confidence and conviction. So where is the humility here? His people then began to argue with him after this bold proclamation. What kind of debate lasts for nights and days? Hence, what kind of debate lasts for nights and days? Hence, the fact that this was a genuine contemplation and reasoning by Ibrahim, peace be upon him, is an undeniable truth, which was supported by the majority of exegetes, as stated in the tafsir of al-Qurtubi. The Qurtubi, long ago we bestowed right judgment on Abraham and we knew him well. 2151 means, according to Al-Farrah, that we gave him this guidance before, meaning before prophethood. Namely, we granted him success in contemplation and reasoning when the night covered him, and he saw the star, the moon, and the sun. It is also said long ago, meaning before Musa and Harun, and Rushd here refers to prophethood. The majority of the exegetes favor the first view. In light of
cannot prefer, because in the Quran, if we talk about prophethood, usually we take about book, we're giving him the book or giving him wisdom. Never or we give him dhikr, but never the word rushd for any prophet except Ibrahim in that sense. And the same word used for the orphans, which is very obvious, clear what does it mean there. So since the same linguistic word, it must be analyzed, understood the same way, unless we have a compelling and forceful reason to abandon it. And this is just the capability of contemplating and proper analytical thinkings in a rational way, in a rational, internally consistent way. So until that moment, when he addresses people, direct my face to the creator of these things, which are obviously because of, and then we will go to the data of the argument why these cannot be divine beings. After that, he maybe have been appointed a prophet. Interestingly, as far as I remember scanning the Quran from cover to cover various times, is nowhere in the Quran, if someone give me some more information about that, or counter example, nowhere you feel that he is being appointed a messenger. He's a prophet, definitely. That's established in the Quran in as a Surah, I think, Taha, you remember, or was it Maryam? واذكر في كتاب إبراهيم إنه كان صديقا نبيا. He was a holy man, he was a صديق, firm believer and a Nabi. And we mentioned at the time that they say these two titles are given to him and only to Idris, which I speculated to be Melchizedek. But that's another issue. So nowhere in the Quran is said that he's a messenger. It's very interesting. So he is a prophet who volunteered to argue with his people. And then after this argument, maybe, or before being thrown into fire, Allah adopted him as a prophet, because this one, and so maybe the ayah, وَكَانَ صَدِّيقًا نَبِيًّا. First he was Siddiq, true believer based on rationality, and then that made Allah step in and adopt him as a prophet. It's a very amazing situation in history, a unique situation in history anyway. So I think that's the best analysis of this story. So let's continue to see what was our focus, obviously, why he came to that conclusion. There's another comment. The one who desperately tried to say that was he arguing with his people. Actually, he's a prophet before, interpreting Rushd as a prophethood, and mostly from the people who are not very skilled in ilm al-kalam and theology and philosophy and mantiq, like Ahl al-Hadith and similar people who they are not very skilled in using their brains anyway. I don't want to comment further. Continue before we start attracting some counter attacks. Okay, carry on.
In light of this, it therefore necessarily follows that this matter occurred at the beginning of Ibrahim alayhi salam's journey, when he was still resident in his original homeland of the Ur of the Chaldeans. This wasn't in Haran after he had migrated, an error which is falsely claimed by many exegetes. The gods that were worshipped by the people of Ibrahim were primarily celestial beings or entities. The sky was viewed as being a realm of permanence, purity, and order. Many ancient peoples in general held this view, particularly among the people of Iraq at that time. Such a matter has been well attested to across the disciplines of archaeology and history. If the people of Ibrahim had a belief in inferior secondary gods of a demonic variety, it is possible that in their belief these gods were originally heavenly, but then rebelled and or were expelled from the heavens and were forced into the lower earth. They are a branch of an original source. Here, there isn't a need to dwell upon their conditions independently. If the original source is valid, the branch is invalid as well, or they are originally earthly and do not require much consideration worthy of mention because change and corruption on earth are too obvious to need extensive consideration. This is also confirmed by the sciences of archaeology, history, and material excavations. There is mention of a female goddess of theirs called Allat or Ereshkigal, who rules the underworld, and idols and images of this Allat have been found, some of which were mentioned previously in this present work. Although Ibrahim alayhi had judged his people to be misguided, given that they built their erroneous religion upon the tradition of following their forefathers, he didn't consider their claims to be invalidated solely upon that basis. Rather, it was necessary to properly deconstruct and demonstrate their underlying falsehood, which is in accordance with the principle set out in the verse. Our party must be rightly guided, and others are clearly astray. And the other clearly astray, and that's 34:24. وَإِنَّا أَوْ إِيَّاكُمْ لَعَلَّ هُدًى أَوْ فِي دَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. There is a clear falsehood that has been perpetuated at first by the Europeans, but now held more generally within the West as a whole. That philosophical inquiry begins with the Greeks. Here, the Quranic narrative of Ibrahim, peace be upon him, shows that this Eurocentric viewpoint is utterly false. Ibrahim, peace be upon him, reached a level of certainty through the medium of his sharp observation and deep contemplation, was then chosen by Allah as a prophet, began inviting his people, raising doubts about their religion, and questioning the reality of these tamathil. Indeed, he refused to call them gods or even asnam. Probing questions were asked of his people. Probing questions were asked of his people concerning the meaning of their dedication to them, including their performance of strange practices undertaken for them. His people clapped, whistled, swayed, danced, rang bells, beat drums, and blew horns and flutes for these gods. Brackets. They may have even sought counsel, drawn lots, offered direct blood sacrifices, including the smearing of blood and other such things, notwithstanding divination or cleromancy. Here, this point was noted by Sayyid Qutb in his seminal work in Fi Dalal al-Quran. This is from Sayyid Qutb rahimahullah. The way he put this question is indicative of his sharp sense of what is right. He gave those stones and wooden shapes their true names. These are statues. He did not call them deities. Instead, he stated his disapproval of their worship of those statues by using the word devoted, which indicates a permanent action. Needless to say, those people did not devote all their time to worshipping them, but they nonetheless attached great respect to them. This is then devotion in an abstract sense. The way Abraham put the question, describing them as permanent devotees to such statues, indicates that he considered their action absolutely absurd. They defended their actions by saying, "We found our forefathers worshipping them." That's 21:53. Their answer indicates that they were in a stone-like, inflexible state of mind that chained them to absurd traditions. They were far removed from freedom of thought, reflection, and the proper evaluation of things and situations which belief in Allah generates as it breaks the chains of imaginary, baseless, and traditional sanctities. This is your comment. For Ibrahim's father, their reply was that these entities aren't mere tamathil, statues, but rather that they are asnam, the worship thereof being inherited through their forefathers. Here, the explicit mention of the word asnam, to which they referred them as the Quran the Quranic verse specifically outlined that clarified in the manifest text where he, the Almighty and Sublime, said, tell them the story of Abraham when he asked his father and his people, what do you worship? They said, we worship idols and are constantly in attendance on them. He asked, do you hear when you call them? Do they hear when you call them? When you call? Do they help or harm you? They replied, no, but this is what we saw our forefathers doing. Abraham said, these idols you have worshipped, you and your fathers are my enemies. Not so the Lord of the worlds who created me. It is he who guides me, he who gives me food and drink, he who cures me when I am ill. He will make me die and then give me life again, and he who will, I hope, forgive my faults on the day of judgment. And that's Quran 26:69 to 82. Okay, so this is a section, conceptual expressions as equations. There is a crucial point here. In their belief, these objects are statues of gods that stand in place of the gods in some sense or another. They are closely connected and associated with the supposed divine entity they represent. This connection legitimizes the statement that is often expressed as I worship this idol as a concise and acceptable expression for those who say it. This is instead of saying a rather longer formulation, I worship such and such God, which this idol represents. We have seen earlier that most of these gods, according to the people of Abraham, are nothing but celestial beings which appear to mankind, be they the sun, the moon, stars, or planets. Noteworthy is how the Quran has expressed this single meaning with two different phrases. Do you take idols as gods? And we worship idols. This necessitates the following equivalencies or equations. That worshipping the idol equals that taking the idol as a god equals attributing something related to divinity to the idol. In other words, and by way of a concise formulation, we have ibadah, worship, equals attributing something from divinity.
I say it's better to, as we said, instead of worship, which is really a secondary aspect of ibadah, but it's really enslaving oneself to something. Regard him as a sovereign and owner, real, intrinsic owner and sovereign. Mm-hmm. And then respect and veneration and all these things follow. So even using the word worship, we discussed that before earlier. But inshallah, we'll sharpen that in the next edition of the Book of Tawheed. We'll sharpen that, make it much clearer. We shall doing it with Arabic, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Necessarily, this follows where the notion of shirk billah, polytheism in relation to Allah, is a matter of ibadah ghayr Allah, namely worshipping other than Allah. Expressed equationally, this would be as follows. Shirk with Allah equals worshipping other than Allah, equals attributing divinity to something other than Allah, which equals to make another God alongside Allah. However, if the definition of shirk with Allah is that of associating another God with Allah, then the prescription would necessarily follow as being shirk with Allah equals associating another God with Allah, equals attribution of divinity to something other than Allah, equals worshipping other than Allah. Irrespective of the initial definition of shirk that was outlined, the final end result is necessarily the same. It is the latter equation that would apply. Proofs of these equations have been provided independently and thoroughly apart from this. Ibrahim salam asked them for evidence of the supposed divinity of such beings when he said, he asked, do they hear you when you call? Do they help or harm you? And that's 26:72-73. His people responded that their evidence, for want of a better word, is the views which were held by their righteous predecessors. In other words, that their ancestors had accurate knowledge and understanding of the matter. It didn't mean that they formally admitted their gods weren't able to hear or respond, or that they provided neither harm nor benefit as those whose minds are corrupted, like the fools from the sect of Wahhabism. Others like them also misread the verse where he, the Exalted, stated, he said, no, it was done by the biggest of them. This one, ask them if they can talk. They turned to one another, saying, "It is you who are in the wrong." But then they lapsed again and said, "You know very well these cannot speak." Abraham said, "How can you worship what can neither benefit nor harm you instead of Allah? Shame on you and on the things that you worship instead of Allah. Have you no sense?" They said, "Burn him and avenge your gods if you are going to do the right thing." And that's 21:63 to 68. The entities cannot speak, as was unanimously agreed by all, and Ibrahim alayhi salam knows this too. Is these tamathil made of stone, all of which are smashed, except for the largest of them, which was referred to as these. Without equivocation, Ibrahim alayhi salam is consistent and insistent, as he has established proofs which have been mentioned earlier, and moreover will be further detailed shortly, that the supposed celestial gods worshipped by these people don't exist at all. Hence, there is nothing in existence except for these mere stones. Thus, the response given by Ibrahim, as shown by verses 66 to 67 above, "How can you worship what can neither benefit nor harm you instead of Allah? Shame on you and on the things you worship instead of Allah. Have you no sense?"
And another place in the Quran, he says, "How are you worshiping things which you fashion with your own hands? That's cutting the statues is done with human hand, and you should know, you should know that you are created by Allah, but the creator of the universe, and what you create is the creation of Allah indirectly through you. So how can you worship or enslave yourself to something which you have fashioned by your own hand?" Again, addressing the tamathil, the statues, and denying or rejecting the point of view that they are more than just statues, that they are somehow the eyes and the ears of the gods, which are, by agreement of all parties, the one are in heavens, Mars, Jupiter, etc. Okay, carry on.
Whenever we find in the Quran statements about the supposed worship deities of the mushrikeen, outlining that they neither harm nor benefit, or that they do not hear or see, or that they do not act or wield power, or similar such description, it is a declaration by the Quran of the true nature of the matter, as it is in the knowledge of Allah, or it is a recounting of what a prophet declared during his debate with his people. It is not a narration of the beliefs of the mushrikeen as they existed in their warped, misguided imaginations. This is what must be affirmed with certainty through both sense and reason. It is utterly impossible for a rational person to call upon an inanimate, deaf, blind, and lifeless object while fully believing it to be exactly that, just an inanimate, deaf, blind, and lifeless object. That must necessarily be within the imagination of the supplicant, something else beyond that. Even if we were to find a patient in a mental institution engaging in a conversation with his shoe or his pen, we would conclude that due to a disorder in his brain, he imagines that he hears speech from it and holds a dialogue with it. The poor individual lives in a fictional world created by his disturbed mind. By way of...
we explained that before when we says هل يسمعونكم etc. They said indeed we inherited that from our parents. This is a bridge version of a long discussion. Most of you said we don't experience that for them directly, but sometimes it happens. But anyway, the gods in heaven, they one are hearing us as well. But these statues said do not hear. And the evidence for that these statues represent these heavenly entities and act as eyes and ears for them is that we found our ancient generations who have better experience and so on doing the same. So they have no really rational evidence to connect that statue with the divine being. Because there's no doubt from archaeology and from the discussion of Ibrahim why he was looking in heavens and earth and stars. Well, these are the original deities, not these stone structures. Stone structures, he knows and his people knows they're just stone structures. But after doing a certain procedure and possibly pouring milk on top of them like they do with the phallus of Shiva or things like that in India now, they suddenly become then the eyes and ears of the divine, or the divine is somehow mysteriously inserted in them. So that claim that this represent these heavenly being after a certain procedure and certain divination and things like that, or mantras or whatever prayers they are utter, that there's no proof for that. But he said, well, that's what our parents and grandparents were doing. That's our only proof we have. So it is a very abridged version of a long discussion.
By way of another example, even animals and birds only flee from a scarecrow in a field due to their limited perception, mistaking it for a human being whose harm they fear. If they realized it was merely a piece of cloth shaped like a human and hung on a stick, they would pay no attention to it, just as they usually ignore a swaying tree or a branch moving in the wind. In his acclaimed tafsir, Al-Razi had almost come to elucidating the reality which underpins the worship of the Asnam. This is from Al-Razi. It can be said that the aqil, rationally discerning individual, does not worship the Asnam, the Sanam, idol, because it is made of wood or stone. Rather, they worship it because they believe it is tamathil, statues, which represent celestial bodies, heavenly spirits, tamathil of prophets, all the salihin, righteous, those who have passed away. Their intention in worshipping these is to direct their worship towards those things of which they made these tamathil and suwar images for the essence of the argument of Ubadil Asnam, that those that worship idols, is that they say the supreme deity is too exalted to be worshipped directly by humans. However, it is more fitting for humans to engage in the worship of the greatest among Allah's servants, such as the celestial bodies and heavenly spirits. These, in turn, worship the supreme deity. This is what they mean by their statement, we only worship them because they bring us nearer to Allah. And that's 39 verse 3. Without doubt, Al-Razi's comments regarding regarding the rational person not worshipping a mere inanimate piece of wood or stone is correct and reasonable. Yet the latter analysis he presents significantly lacks precision. Reformulated and rephrased, it would have been more apt to state that they worship them in the belief that they are representations of supposed divine beings, but that in relation to celestial beings or entities, angels or other such spirit-type entities, be that in relation to the celestial bodies or angels or other such spirit-type entities, or if representations of prophets and the righteous who have had divine qualities attributed to them, or even if relating to other types of representation, such as demonic entities and spirits, or the like. Where Al-Razi begins with the mention of the one who is aqil, this refers to an individual who retains a minimum level of required reason to be addressed with the responsibilities or obligations in matters of the deen. It is in contrast to those that below that level of maturity, for example, a child or one who is mentally incapacitated. He doesn't limit intent to only a fully mature and thoughtful, rational person. Some criticism needs to be leveled through, though, where he argues that they say the supreme deity is too exalted to be worshipped directly by humans. This is coupled with his self-contradictory comment on the worship of the greatest among Allah's servants. It is like that because it is impossible to say that stars and spirits are worshipped unless there is a prior belief in their divinity. It is impossible to worship prophets merely as prophets or angels merely as angels. Their being the greatest among Allah's servants is no doubt a reality and is the belief of Al-Razi and all Muslims, but it is not the belief of those who worship them. So one must take serious heed. So basically what you're indicating is that they have to have expressed a certain understanding of these entities before.
They must attribute some divinity to the stars and so on. Not that they are great and they just worship the Lord and we worship through them only. No. The star worship and so on in the Chaldean and later with the philosophical expansion of that is that these are the direct manager of the world below them, and the one above them, because they regard them as like circles or balls, one inside each other. The internal one is under the control of the one directly above them. That's all. The supreme ones are completely unaware, do not know what's going on below. That's the basic idea there. So So there's no way for at least for these who are in a philosophical sophistication of the seven spirits and seven minds or whatever number of minds and so on, is that the ultimately supreme far away is completely unaware about anything except by himself, and from him emanates the second, the next level, and the next level, and the next level, the next level by emanation, not by act of will or any knowledge. But to that level of extreme philosophical sophistication, definitely the Chaldean were not to that level, but they regard, for example, the moon as the closest, the moon to the earth, and this one is controlling the earth. And the one creates here, does whatever here. So it's the one should prayer also directed to him. What his relation to the one above him is not relevant for us. That's what a Chaldean would say. So it's very confused, obviously. It's some kind of a twisted mythological cosmology, trying to, and since the stars and so on, you hear from your parents and grandparents that they are coming up and down the same way for so many millennia. Maybe there was little records. The people think they are eternal. They are not created. That was the argument of Ibrahim. That's not true. And he gave the evidence, which we will discuss maybe down the road. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Further to this, there are some additional submatters that need to be taken into consideration, for there are other justifications that are advanced from the vantage point of the mushrikeen. Often, these invariably include the following. The following: A, the notion that the chief god and father rejoices in the worship of his children and rewards it. Therefore, in essence, it is worship of him and an offering to him necessarily. B, that the children of the chief god, the father, holds a premier status with their father. Their intercession is never rejected and does not require permission. Thus, for humans, worshipping the children is sufficient to achieve the desired outcome. C, that the chief god and father is distant, arrogant, and exalted, and can only be reached through intermediaries. Many mushrikeen have held the view that the very notion of this distance is a distinct quality of perfection attributed to the greatest god. D, that the chief god is somehow powerless, not being able to act or create except through the medium of intermediaries. Here, this isn't a surprise that many mushrikeen have held to this with the warped idea it is a quality of perfection that must be attributed to the greatest god, and he doesn't become embroiled in earthly or temporal matters stained by corruption. All of this can be applied in relation to Ibrahim with regards to his father and people. They were convinced and adamant about their false belief, which were inherited from their ancestors. Those beliefs included the existence of those supposed exalted heavenly gods deemed worthy of support. For that very reason, they struck out. And they said, "Burn him and avenge your gods if you are going to do the right thing." That's 2168. Support for these gods that they held is manifestly clear here. These were the deities that Ibrahim alayhi salam had believed in. He denied their very existence, coupled with his acts. No doubt they would have construed that as a massive insult and blasphemy. The debate and confrontation occurred much later, after the events of our present analysis. Ibrahim alayhi salam had migrated thereafter when Allah saved him from the fire and he left his homeland. Despite the clarity and obviousness of this matter, we find that the distinguished scholar Abdurrahman ibn Yahya al-Muallimi is struck with blindness of insight due to being affected by the deadly Wahhabi mind virus, as he says. The matter to be, this is from him, the matter to be determined here is, does this indicate that his people are worshipping the planets? Some of the Mufassirin have said so, but it was actually the worship of Asnam. The people defied the Asnam, worshipped them, invoked them, and made them partners. Did they believe that these Asnam themselves had the power to bring benefit or harms? It seems unlikely, as when Ibrahim, peace be upon him, asked them, he asked, "Do they hear you when you call? Do they help or harm you?" They replied, "No, but this is what we saw our forefathers doing." It appears that if they had believed that Asnam could harm or benefit, they wouldn't have resorted to relying on inherited tradition. In fact, their use of the word Bal, suggests that they conceded that the Asnam neither harm nor benefit them, neither hear, harm nor benefit. This is further supported by the fact that when Ibrahim alayhi salam broke them while they were absent, and they were told that he had been heard mentioning them before, they did not find his ability to break them far-fetched. When he said to them, he said, no, it was done by the biggest of them, this one. Ask them if they can talk. They turned to one another, saying, it is you who are in the wrong. But then they lapsed again and said, you know very well these gods cannot speak. Also, when he asked them, he said to his father, Father, why do you worship something that can neither hear nor see nor benefit you in any way? They avoided answering and instead had said, burn him and avenge your gods. This is also evidenced by his words to his father. He said to his father, Father, why do you worship something that can neither harm, neither hear, nor see, nor benefit you in any way? To which he replied by claiming the Asnam could help him, but he had replied, his father answered, Abraham, do you reject my gods? I will stone you if you do not stop this. Keep out of my way. So why were they worshipping them then? In light of this, I would say, this is you, can you see how the damage that Wahhabi thought has inflicted upon the mind with its rejection of thought? How the people have insisted upon it so unconsciously so that their distorted, fabricated religion does not collapse. Indeed, it is immensely unfortunate that this distinguished scholar has been afflicted with such blindness of insight that he clearly cannot distinguish between a timthal, a statue, and that of a sanam, an idol. Recall to mind the equation: a sanam equals a timthal plus strong direction with a supposed divine being and a representation of it. Despite being a memorizer of the Quran, Al-Muallimi was unable to understand the miraculous nature of the Quran in its brevity of recounting stories and the concise rendering of debates that occurred against opponents, either because the details are not important or because they are left out relying on the reader's insights or for other considerations. Take, for example, where he, the exalted and majestic, says, they said, call on your Lord for us to show us what color it should be. This is from Surah Baqarah. قالوا ادعوا لنا ربك يبين لنا ما لونها قال إنه يقول إنها بقرة صفراء فاقع لونها تسر الناظرين قالوا ادعوا لنا ربك يبين لنا ما هي إن البقرة تشابه علينا وإنا إن شاء الله لمهتدون قال إنه يقول إنها بقرة لا ذلول تثير الأرض ولا تسقي الحرث مسلمة لا شية فيها قالوا الآن جئت بالحق فذبوها وما كادوا يفعلون. They said, call on your Lord for us to show us what color it should be. He answered, Allah says it should be a bright yellow cow, pleasing to the eye. They said, call on your Lord for us to show us exactly what it is. All cows are more or less alike. With Allah's will, we shall be guided. He replied, it is a perfect and unblemished cow, not trained to till the earth or water the fields. They said, now you have brought the truth, and so they slaughtered it, though they almost failed to do so. And that's Surah Baqarah 69 to 71. Is there any doubt in the mind of a rational person that they went searching for a yellow cow for days and nights until the matter became confusing for them, while the murdered man there lay unchanged, neither decomposing nor swelling? Then after they returned and complained, all cows are more or less alike to us. He told them that it is a perfect and unblemished cow, not trained to till the earth or water the fields. So they went searching through the land until they found the desired cow and bought it at an exorbitant price, while the murdered man lay there unchanged, neither decomposing nor swelling. Did any of this appear in the text of the Quran? Secondly, sorry, I'm not sure what you're getting at there, Sheikh. Is this the fact that
The story of the cow.
Yeah, what I'm saying, was the body not touched? Was it didn't
No,
decompose?
because it was the man was killed, and then he told they were checking who is the killer. So get a cow, and they say, "Are you making a mockery of us? What has a cow to do with this?" And then they went going searching, and the yellow one, and so on. This could not have been done in 2 minutes. It takes days and so on. But the Quran does not mention that. You should put a scene in front of you and imagine what's going on. Fill the gaps in the appropriate way.
I'm just trying to say, what's the connection between that and it not being decomposing?
No, because it's in the hot weather of that area. In 2-3 days, it will decompose. And maybe they were searching. If they were searching seriously, it will take more than 3-4 days.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we can drop the decomposing. But the body is waiting there. Definitely is. It took more than a couple of days to do the search.
Secondly,
So,
another example.
So regarding the messengerhood of Ibrahim alayhi salam, you're saying that he's not a messenger, right? But I think
the Quran does not mention the word Rasul. That's what I'm saying.
But we can make istinbat from other ayahs, like for example, صحف Ibrahim wa Musa, the scrolls of
Has
Ibrahim
nothing to do with that. Suhuf could be for a prophet. Does not need to be for a messenger.
Because normally scrolls is coming with a messengerhood. You have a message you need to deliver.
Yeah,
right?
but it's not. There's no necessity. The Quran does not show the word Rasul anywhere. That's very interesting. I'm not saying there's not a Rasul, but it doesn't seem to be mentioned anywhere.
So how about فاصبر كما صبر أولو العزم من الرسل? I know many scholars like wavered. They did not like specifically know who is أولو العزم.
Yeah, and they mentioned Ibrahim under them because it's a higher praise in the Quran. But this is only a conclusion also.
Yeah, but it's a strong conclusion because Allah says in the other ayah وإذا أخذنا من النبيين okay نبيين here ميثاقهم ومنك ومن نوح وإبراهيم وموسى وعيسى بن مريم. So he specifically designated Muhammad and Ibrahim.
Carry the rest of the ayah. Maybe the ayahs have the solution. Carry on.
Okay, so because I don't have the okay, 1 second. Where is the ayah? I need some time to bring it up. So anyways, while I'm bringing it up,
no, I'm just checking that point. I'm just mentioning that point. It doesn't seem to be have sent to a certain people.
So okay, so how about I'm gonna pull up the ayah, but how about when Allah says إني جعلك للناس إماما? I'm gonna make you imam for the nas.
Yeah,
doesn't this
that does not necessarily be a messenger.
Does not also indicate
not necessarily. No, it's not necessarily a messenger. Not even a prophet, but a leader of humanity. That he is a messenger and a prophet is Siddiq is extra ranks. Example for human beings, a leader for human beings.
I mean, when the ayah وإذ أخذنا من النبيين ميثاقهم.
I'm not saying he's not a messenger. I say there's nowhere in the Quran clearly that he's mentioned as a for Musa. It's clear that he's a Rasul. جاءهم رسول كريم.
Yeah, clearly mentions Rasul.
The same with Ismail. كان رسولا نبيا.
Yeah. So okay, but Ibrahim, he came for to deliver a message for his people.
No, maybe he volunteered that we are just discussing. It seems to have come late. We've started the chapter showing that the area of contemplation is his own analytical philosophical study. And he confronted the people. Maybe he was appointed after that a messenger or a prophet. We don't know. Definitely a prophet he is. We know that.
Yes, he's a prophet. Yeah.
Yeah. Strange. Anyway, just said it's amazing.
Yeah, indeed, it's very strange. It's a new point to me. But anyways,
no, it's not a point. I'm just mentioning it casually. It's not an issue to be waging a battle or a war about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't seem to be.
Absolutely. But regarding another point, regarding الشك الإبراهيمي, that when Ibrahim did not doubt, but he asked Allah for materialistic evidence. I think
he called it doubt. نحن أخذت بالشك. That's the reason for saying doubt.
Okay, regardless of tasmi, I think it's a purely scientific method because here Ibrahim.
No doubt about that. That he wants verification, which he can see with his own.
Solidify. After he rationalized.
We said that from the level of علم اليقين to the علم or عين اليقين that he has seen it with his own eyes.
So after he rationalized the existence of Allah and his characteristics and his oneness, Allah, he asked for a materialistic dalil, and he even.
No, this is definitely far down when he was in Palestine. I don't think it's when his own people.
Okay. Okay, but
it's not in that context. It's in the context about reviving the dead, etc., etc.
I see, I see. But nevertheless, Ibrahim himself, he taught us this methodology when he told his people, قل سيروا في الأرض فانظروا كيف بدأ الخلق. By the way, this is Ibrahim saying to his people. And then he said, أولم
Where
يروا
is that?
كيف يبدأ
Check the
الله
ayah.
الخلق ثم يعيده.
No, check the context. I don't think it's Ibrahim saying that.
No,
Anyway,
it's Ibrahim. It's Ibrahim. 100% Ibrahim.
no, check the context. Check, the ayah is there. Just go to the Mus'haf and read it. It's excellent if it's like that.
Yeah, I have it in front of me because here وإبراهيم إذ قال لقومه اعبدوا الله واتقوه وإن تكذبوا فقد كذب من قبلكم أولم يروا كيف يبدئ الله الخلق قل سيروا في الأرض فانظروا. Okay, and then the following ayah he says فما كان جواب قومه. That's the following ayah. So it's indeed in the context of the story of Ibrahim.
Yeah,
He's saying this to these people.
Yeah, the problem is that قل is that addressing Muhammad. Possibly, because in the Quran sometimes it goes back and forth. But anyway, there's no problem. It's not a problem. I'm not discussing these issues. I'm saying that it's interesting that nowhere the word Rasul is. For example, it's Ibrahim قال لقومه. Remember when he said that? It did not say like in case of Nuh and all other messenger. We send Nuh to his people. We send this one to here. We send this one.
Yeah.
If you see, that's the only point. I'm just mentioning casual.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
but I just need to confirm that what does the Prophet ﷺ meant when he said ashak? Because Ibrahim did not make shak, right? He just wanted to solidify his belief. He did not doubt God.
The Prophet said that's حق بالشك. If Ibrahim can ask us a question, we should be able to ask us a question too. That's what he said. That's all.
But my question is it really shak? Because Ibrahim did not make shak. He only questioned. He only wanted further evidence.
That may be indicating shak. Maybe there's something else. So if you take it as a shak, then we all entitled to do the same. And also when I said أفلم تؤمن, then are you not believing?
He said yes.
Okay. بلى ولكن يطمئن قلبي, so that I got complete satisfaction of the heart, complete tranquility by seeing it with my own eyes.
Because the point that I want to introduce here is that it is not the shak of mushrikeen, because in
no, that is the persistent continuous shak.
Yes,
this is just
because these
an idea coming in the mind. That's just a fleeting idea coming in the mind. Yeah.
Because these mushrikeen, they don't have any dalil to prove their deity.
Oh yeah. No, we're not comparing Ibrahim or the shak of Ibrahim to the same when the Quran talks about في الآخرة. Some people say إني ظننت أن I guessed that I will be accounted after death. The word ظننت may indicate ظننت is sometimes a word which can be used in opposite meaning, doubting and firm knowledge. I think ظننت indicates that knowledge which people have about the resurrection and so in many places and other places in الذين يظنون أنهم ملاقو ربهم يظنون, that you will never be absolutely firm as if you have really died and resurrected. It's still sometimes fleeting idea coming in your mind.
There is a small percentage because your knowledge is not infinite. Allah
there's no doubt about that, but that's not the issue here. Discussion here of this the levels of yaqeen and so on, and even the level yaqeen of prophets will never be the level of the yaqeen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Absolutely, yes.
Mu'min is the absolute belief. There's not even if even the term of fraction of a second applies to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that there is any doubt. So this is a perfect absolute knowledge.
So the point that I want to stress, I think it's already clear that Ibrahim, his question for Allah, whether it's doubt or not, I'm not going to argue with this, but it's something completely different than when Ibrahim asked himself, هل يسمعونكم إذ تدعون أو ينفعونكم أو يضرون. They don't have evidence, but Ibrahim have evidence for Allah.
We're not discussing that. We're not discussing any comparison. No. They don't have.
Absolutely. إن يتبعون إلا الظن. They are just following thoughts and
guesswork.
Guesswork. But Ibrahim, he reached the knowledge, the existence of Allah through his rationality and through
that's the main purpose of this chapter.
Absolutely. Yes.
That's what the point.
I think it's clear. Jazakallah.
Okay, continuing. Secondly, another example, he the exalted and majestic said, when he reached maturity, we gave him judgment and knowledge. This is how we reward those who do good. The woman in whose house he was living tried to seduce him. That's Surah 12:22-23. If there any doubt in the mind of a rational person that the wife of Al-Aziz embraced him, Yusuf, as if he were her own son, cared for him and raised him, but when he grew up and his exceptional beauty and full manliness became apparent, her feelings shifted from maternal to those of carnal desire. After some time, she could no longer bear it, so she began to plan and scheme. On one day, she seized the opportunity of a clear day, with her husband absent, having left Yusuf behind and not taking him along that day.
I mentioned that if you read the story, there's no mention of these details. That's very obvious. You have to fill the gaps with your man. The Aziz bring Yusuf there, be good to him. Maybe he will be beneficial for us, or we may adopt him as a son, which indicates that Aziz is barren. They have no children. See, that's also you can read between the lines. And then after that, the Quran jumps to the seduction story. What is the big gap there? It's clear. He grew up, and then the Quran mentioned the growing up, and then he is coming out of age, and he was given hukman wa ilman. Thus indicate hukman means most likely prophethood. Yeah. But all these details are just omitted. They're irrelevant for the main line of the story. And everyone can imagine the situation if he has just a reasonable mind. Fill the gaps with whatever reasonable development you could think about. While in the issue of that she was caught red-handed, and then they met the husband, and when obviously the husband was not alone, someone from her family was with him, because he was present at the situation and gave the witness immediately. And she tore his thobe, his garment from the back. And then the husband was saying, what's going on? What's happening here? The situation looked very, very, very suspicious. And she said immediately, what are you supposed to do with someone who is trying to do something evil with your wife? And then Yusuf was squeezed in the corner. He was not planning to expose her, but he said, she is the one who tried to seduce me. And then the relative with him. In the Old Testament, none of that is mentioned at all. At all. Nothing but obviously Yusuf narrated story to his people and so on, just saying she was seduced and so on. Or they hear the story from the final court meeting, which was in the final court meeting, they will not go to the issue of seduction, the details. Just say, I seduced him. He's telling the truth. That's all what she said. And that was enough to finish the case, legal case. And they filled the gap with a story that this being the chief guardian, he put him in prison because of that. All that in between, and the story of the woman is missing. The Quran mentioned these details, because they are not in the Old Testament. You have to be there to mention. But they mentioned this to tell us, look, in the Old Testament, they even missed that part. They were not present, and they just, he was in prison definitely after the seduction story. So what's the gap in between? For the Old Testament is the husband became angry. He is the chief guardian, chief guard, the boss of the guards of the royal guard, and he put him in prison. That's it. For them, that's all what they knew. All in between is mentioned in the Quran in relatively more detail. Relatively more detail because it's missing there. There's no way you can guess it, you see? That's mean the way of Quran narrative. If you see that, you know what's going on. Sometimes they abridge the whole life of, like the whole life of Nuh, for example. It's abridged in Surah Nuh and other places. In 5 lines, 950 years, he's doing the same and the same and the same. We're doing it in various variations. Generation died, another generation came up and see this man standing there. And everyone from their father, grandfather, tell me this guy is bothering us now for 100 years. And our great-grandfather told us that he's bothering him for 100 years. So in the latest generation, he completed 950 years, for example. Other people fill the gap by saying the people have a lifespan of 1,000 years at that time, which is nonsense. For example, I mean, so you have to read the Quran with a bit more open eye, with more really filling the gaps of things which you can fill a reasonable way without really affecting the fundamental structure of the story or the fundamental structure of the wisdom there. You can fill, which is perfectly fine. someone feels. But you should not think it has been just immediately done next second. It may be going over days and maybe months and years, things like that. Yeah, carry on. That's a purpose of mentioning these two different stories. We show that you have to fill the gaps in certain places because it's common sense and reasonability will show you how to fill it. Like for example, we say, do they hear you or they hear it you? The Quran jumps with it. No, they don't hear us and so on, but they are the eyes and ears, or they communicate that to the deities in heaven. And then Ibrahim may have answered them because it's after detecting that these entities are not divine. So these entities are not divine; they are just heavenly bodies. They cannot hear and do anything. They said, no. They said, you are claiming things that things we cannot do, can't be tested and analyzed. We are going to another issue, but we inherited that from fathers and grandfathers, and that's the creed we inherited. The creed that these statues represent are connected the eyes and ears of these heavenly entities, which are divine and can harm and do good. Yeah. But that's all dropped because it should be clear. Unfortunately, it was not clear for some Wahhabi because they chose not to use their brain. That's it. Because as we said from the beginning, it is impossible to imagine someone who is not mental in a mental institution to think that this statue, this idol, which he looks at this statue, can't do nothing. Is just a statue, dead, not moving, not doing anything at all, and still he is bowed to it and kiss it and love it. Why? He would then say, because it's very beautiful. It's a very, very beautiful item. I'm not worshipping it. I'm just enjoying its beauty. Maybe it's made out of emerald or something like that. But that's not the case here. For the case of idols, made out of wood or metal or something like that, they must have another meaning in themselves. Notice that the mere material body, which they themselves have cut, like when Ibrahim rebukes his father or his people, أَتَعْبُدُونَ مَا تَنْحِتُونَ, you worship what you are cutting with your own hands, what you are forming with your own hands. You know, it's just pure material, dead material. You are working with it. He's trying to bring them the evidence to see that if you are cutting with his own hand, and these deities, that's what they are refusing to accept, that deities in heavens do not exist. Yes, the planetary bodies exist, but they are not deities. They are nothing. They're just heavenly bodies. God knows what their nature is, but they're definitely not divine, definitely. So there was no communication between this statue and this. This should be filled. You should fill the gaps, But it seems to be, unfortunately, some people are unbelievable. It's unbelievable that someone could that's right. Maybe someone coming late after the time of the Sahaba and so on, the time of the Prophet, he doesn't see the reality of that. But you can, if you want to see the realities of idols, definitely at that time when Wahab, for example, but even in the time of Ibn Taymiyyah, he should have known that there's idol worship in India and in some still in parts of, and some of the Turkic tribe who did not embrace Islam yet and so on. And he can go and check what they are doing, what they believe about the idols. I never bother checking that. Nor he read with the open eye what the Quran is saying. Okay. So that's the problem with the people. They think that these idol worship the idol, believing that it's just a piece of stone, nothing else. That's the problem. That's a fundamental problem. Yeah, carry on. Rush.
Carrying on the story. After time, one day after she sees the opportunity of a clear day, with her husband absent, having left Yusuf behind and not taking him along, that day invited Yusuf to her chamber to discuss some household matters. Yusuf, in his innocence, went to her, seeing her as nothing but a mother. She opened the conversation, expressed her love, then locked the doors, etc. Did any of this appear in the text of the Quran? There is a clear inability to distinguish between the nature of sanam and a timthal, underpinning the source of confession, which then borders upon obsession, as demonstrated in the following quote from Al-Muallimi. Coupled with that, there is a skewed reading and failure to notice the miraculous nature of the Quranic text in its expression. So why were they worshipping them? This is from Al-Muallimi. It appears from their response when they said, but this is what we saw our forefathers doing, along with what has been previously mentioned, that they were worshipping them merely to preserve their customs and the traditions of their forefathers out of pride and refusal to abandon them. It is narrated about some of the mushrikeen of Quraysh that they were convinced of the falsehood of their practices, but they found it difficult to admit that both they and their ancestors had been misguided. This is supported by the fact that when Ibrahim alayhi salam broke the asnam, he said, no, it was done by the biggest of them. This one, ask them if they can talk. They turned to one another, saying, it is you who are in the wrong. In this, there is an acknowledgement that the asnam neither harm nor benefit, and they were only turned upside down in shame simply to maintain their customs. Had they worshipped the tamathils as representatives of other beings, they would have shifted in both instances, and Allah knows best. To claim that they were not worshipping the idols for their own sake, but rather the way to honor the human beings, the beings the tamathil represented, for example. Moreover, if they had worshipped the statues with this intention, they would have been worshipping those beings that the statues represented. In that case, the debate between Ibrahim alayhi salam and his people would have included the mention of that, just as it did in the case of our Prophet and other prophets. In fact, the majority of what our Prophet addressed in the Quran does not mention idols themselves, but rather his arguments with the mushrikeen often focused on angels and imaginary daughters.
Mhm.
So are you stating here that the fact that this statement of a Muallimi to say that the lack of context means that there isn't context? So, is this what
No, the Ma'alim is still insisting that they're worshipping these statues as knowing that they are stone and nothing else. Vague, not what the reality. It's confusing, but the Quran mentioned the reality of the things. They think that's what the Muslims believe.
But he's concluded that because of the omission of the details around it, because he said that there's no mention of it. Because and that's why you gave the two examples. The example of
because he looks at a bridge eye or a response of a long discussion, maybe in 2 sentences. He thinks that in between nothing has happened, which clarify things at that time when if you have been present there at that time.
More also, the breaking. So this is you now. The breaking of the statues was nothing but a final desperate attempt by Ibrahim alayhi salam to awaken his people from their slumber through the method of violent shock to open the door to debate for the last time. Breaking a sanam is not an argument for the invalidity of its supposed divinity. The defeat of true believers is not evidence of the non-existence of Allah or proof of Allah's abandonment of them, as may be suggested by some crippled, ailing minds. This was after a long time of argument and debate with compelling arguments and strong proofs. And this is from the Quran. This is Quran 678 to 83, which I'll now read in translation of. Then he saw the sun rising and cried, this, my Lord, this is greater. But when the sun set, he said, my people, I disown all that you worship besides Allah. I have turned my face as a true believer towards him who created the heavens and the earth. I am not one of the mushrikeen. His people argued with him, and he said, how can he argue with me about Allah when he has guided me? I do not fear anything you associate with him. Unless my Lord wills, nothing can happen. My Lord encompasses everything in his knowledge. How can you not take heed? Why should I fear what you associate with him, who I do not fear to associate with him things for which he has sent you no authority? Tell me if you know the answer. Which side has more right to feel secure? It is those who have faith and do not mix their faith with idolatry who will be secure, and it is they who are rightly guided. Such was the argument we gave to Abraham against his people. We raised in rank whoever we will. Your Lord is all-wise, all-knowing. It can only be imagined that this statement came from him because they threatened him with the wrath and vengeance of their gods. This, in addition to what has been previously explained, is definitive proof that they believed in the divinity of these gods, attributing to them an independent power of governance and the ability to bestow benefit or inflict harm autonomously. Okay, so that concludes this chapter. The next chapter, let's see, it's quite short, so we can finish it. We can make the next chapter the last one. Okay, so we're on page 210 now, chapter 3, the Abrahamic tradition. Given the preceding analytical discussion, we now turn to liberating the underlying principles related to the line of Abrahamic reasoning to derive some of its key points and critical implications. So just a footnote here. Broadly, this is the rendered title from the Arabic edition. Okay, so just explaining what it is. Okay. After the initial encounter with his father, Ibrahim alayhis salam headed immediately to seriously ponder upon their celestial heavenly bodies and carefully observing their conditions, with the notion that he may find among them one who deserves to be titled as "This is my Lord." Here meaning, "This is my master and my owner, the possessor of the utmost dominance, holding prerogative of command, Rationally, this can only be the one who, the God who is wajib al-wujud, the necessarily existent, acting by
At the
way
time,
of...
at the time of Ibrahim, these concepts were not developed like that in this sharpness, but you feel them internally. And Ibrahim is obviously an exceptionally rational person, exceptionally rational and capable. He may have not have even a word developed for that yet, but you perceive it internally. No.
Yeah, Professor, I think we need to give it more credit. The آية فأي الفريقين أحق بالأمن إن كنتم تعلمون ما لم ينزل به عليكم سلطانا. So how come you worship these idols whom you don't have any evidence for? And the true meaning of this, that you will impossibly have any evidence for. ما لم ينزل
we
عليكم به
discussed that
سلطان.
issue, that the word Sultan. We discussed it in previous chapters.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
So it's indeed that ما لم ينزل به عليكم سلطانا. It's not that there's a probability that he might or
no.
might
We
not
discussed
give you
that
sultan.
before. We
It is
discussed.
impossible, conceivably impossible.
Yeah,
Yes.
you have been present when we discussed that with the meaning of this sentence.
I think I missed that. I think I must
Oh
not
yeah, we
have.
discussed it at length. That does not mean that it is possible, but how can we show something which, by necessity of reason, could not have been any authority?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Impossible for Allah to send an authority for something like that.
Yes, yes. Absolutely. That's the true meaning of it.
We discussed that. Yeah, we
Yeah.
discussed it very extensively. I think
Absolutely.
also, I think maybe in tafsir also, if Allah remembers, in various places. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember we discussed a similar ayah, which is لا برهان له به.
The same.
That there's no evidence for
That's in
it.
tafsir, and I mentioned that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, excellent. Jazakallah khair.
Okay. This is so okay. Rationally, this can only be the God who is wajib al-wujud, the necessarily existent, acting by way of ultimate will and choice. And this cannot be except a single being, not a multiplicity. So is it this celestial body, as our people have alleged? When it's set, it became clear that A, either the entity is acting out of necessity, not by will and choice, hence it cannot be constructed as a God or Lord, or B, is that celestial entity contingent in its existence, not necessary. This is because the necessary being is every present, eternal, and is, I think, I'm not sure.
You're feeling it a bit. If you think maybe this concept were not yet developed in that way we formulate it today, but you're feeling it by internal retrospection. I am finite, I'm limited, and so on. And they started in existence. So who started me? My parents. Okay, my parents are also the same category. Who started them? And you go and tell this chain must end by necessity, otherwise it is empty. So there must be that one must be existing by necessity, must be omnipresent, must be all of these things you can drive. Ibrahim may fill them and develop them with his own language, and maybe a little bit primitive than the sophisticated language of today, but he developed them. And it doesn't apply to these moving things. Let me just mention something which obviously the Wahhabi will know. If that entity is obviously in space, we see it in a certain direction. But if it's a necessarily existing being, it cannot be in a specific direction only. It must be in all directions, in all places. If such a category applies to him, it must be applying to so that he in a place different than another place, meaning there's a possibility of extension, and thus undermine being necessarily existing, and so on. So if Allah is in space, if we are allowed to say he is in space or in heaven, being contained in heaven or in space, then he must be everywhere. Or he is not in space at all, and still omnipresent without being in space. Yeah. So that's the only way. Obviously, Quran, we're addressing everyone, even the simple-minded cowboy and the simple-minded shepherd and so on. It will use the language as if it's a space. That's just mention a point aside. When they ask him, say, Allah, where was our Lord before creating heaven and earth? They think he's in the heaven and earth, like someone sitting on a chair somewhere and surrounded by things like that. The philosophical answer will be he's nowhere. There's no ayn at that time. But this whole comprehend that, except even the philosophers in Athene may have a problem comprehending at that time. So what to say? كان في عما ما فوقه هواء وما تحته هواء. That's what's been narrated. I didn't check that the isnad of this hadith, but assume it's authentic. He was in darkness, or in like Amma is a desert which you can get lost because there's no sign indicating anything. It's just flat. Everything is dark and flat. Above him is air or vacuum. Below him is air. That's the best you can represent someone who either you say there is no ayn, there was no space, nobody will comprehend that, or imagine a space, but it's an empty vacuum. Nothing is around him, and darkness, complete vacuum and darkness. That's the only other alternative. If you imagine him as a body, then surrounded with absolute nothingness, which does not exist anyway. But that's the only way so he answered the people according to the level of their imagination, not of rationalization, because rationalizing this to that level is very sophisticated, very advanced, and it's only really available to the philosophers. And even now, everywhere in the world, if there is anybody who say God is everywhere, or in somewhere, or only in heaven, but not in earth, and things like that. That's all what they can say. They will not say he's not in space at all. The same problem with this, when physicists, many physicists fall in this problem. This universe, they think it's like a ball in an empty space in which other universes may collide and so on. This is bad imagination. There's no void, nothing. This all space is here. And even that's amazingly, they was discussed by philosophers long ago. Ibn Sina says, question, what's outside this universe? Is it khala or mala? Is it void or it is full with something else? And he says neither. There's no outside. The definition of outside does not exist. But the way we perceive with our senses force us to use these terms. But unless we really analyze them deeply and see what the necessity of reason indicate, you will follow the imagination and imagine something like an empty space which goes infinitely in every direction. The absolute space of Newton. Even Newton recognized there's a problematic there. Say the absolute space is God himself somehow, something like that. But they're not a good expression. The same with time. But in the same time, we have the hadith of Prophet ﷺ, fantastic hadith, when he said the son of Adam is hurting me, when he says, what a miserable time, what a miserable passage of time. And I am the time. And then he explained that I am the one who turned day and night. Time is the expression of the divine activity. So you can say in that sense, Allah is out of time. He is the one who makes time. What the time is the mathematical or the numerical expression as measured by clocks of his divine activity. And which activity is mentioned there? The one which is related to the counting day and night, and time is day and night. Yeah. Obviously, it does everything else, but this is the one which indicated related in your mind to the clocks and hours and so on. That's the best you can say. Anything else would be abstract mathematics and very complicated. Okay, let's carry on then.
This is because the necessary being is everywhere present, eternal, and perpetual. If it is existing in one place, it must exist everywhere. Hence, that is impossible and absurd for it to disappear. By implication, the same reasoning would apply to the remainder of the celestial bodies and entities, be that the sun, the moon, or a particular star. Here, Ibrahim alayhi salam arrived at the definitive truth. All the celestial bodies and entities cannot be titled as this is my Lord. Thus it became manifestly clear that all of them must be contingent, governed, originated, and ultimately created. That would also apply to even more so to the earth and all that reside upon it. In the temporal world of the earth, contingency, change, decay are more pronounced, obvious, and apparent. The Lord must necessarily be something other than all of that. It must necessarily be the one being who brought all existence into meaning, who initiated creation itself, including that of the heavens and the earth. Without doubt, this is an absolute necessity. So, scholarly discourse section. Turning to some of the previous scholarly discussion in this respect, Sheikh Muhammad Abu Zahra elucidated the following in his work, Zahratul Tafsir. Allah the Almighty has affirmed that what He gave to Ibrahim with use of the letter Lam, Lam, and the definite particle Qad, Rushd, maturity and righteousness, refers to the knowledge, recognition, and awareness in reaching the cognizance of Allah, the Almighty, in the midst of ignorance that had clouded people's intellects, preventing them from proper understanding. He, Ibrahim alayhi salam, recognized by observation of the star that set, then the moon, and finally the sun, up until he realized divine oneness. All of this represents maturity, sound awareness, and a complete recognition of the notion of divinity, the one that is free from resemblance to the transient events, such as the rising and setting of celestial bodies, free from similarity to the impermanence of created beings. With regard to the Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi, he commented upon this in several places in his work of tafsir. This is from Imam Razi. The third issue, know that He, the Exalted, commanded the worship of Him, and the command relating to His worship is premised upon cognizance of His existence. The knowledge of His existence was not necessary, but rather made inferentially, thus necessary to delineate the evidence proving His existence. Know that we clarified in Al-Qutb al-Aqliyah that the way to prove His existence, the Exalted, is either by the way of Haduth or al-Imkan, all of which are neither in the essences or in the contingencies. So the total ways to prove the existence of Allah are 6. No more on that. The third of them is Haduth al-Asjam, and into this,
the bodies, the creation of bodies. Yeah.
And into it is the indication in the saying of Ibrahim, peace be upon him, I do not like things that set. So it's your statement. This probably isn't the correct context of the hadith of Ajsam, the occurrence of bodies, but more fitting within the realm of al-imkan, possibility.
Yeah, this is the contingency is the better argument than huduth. Huduth is a good argument, but huduth is a subcategory of contingent. Something is contingent, could exist, could have, otherwise it not existing. Something which started to exist before that it was not existing is definitely more possible, mumkin. Because before that it was not there. Now it is here, so it's contingent. But contingency is a wider concept. It relieves you from going into the issue of time and the beginning of time, which is a very complex issue. So it's easier. But most mutakallimin went by huduth, by studying the bodies, dividing them mentally and things like that, and they achieved some good results. But they got stuck with one problem of when you do hudud, you get to the issue of time, and then when you go with the time back, you get in trouble then, because they could not do because you're going now to infinity in the past, in the back. Going to past in infinity is impossible. It has to be end somewhere. But if it ends somewhere, then your imagination thinks, what's before the somewhere? There's nothing before that. There's an impossibility. But it's extremely difficult to imagine when you close your eye and try to imagine it. But it's possible to rationalize it with a bit of heavy work also in rationalization. With a bit of heavy work. It's quite heavy. It's quite heavy. Maybe for someone who is really, I just give a hint. Maybe someone listening who is having some background in mathematics, look, for example, a definition domain of the logarithm. Any logarithm, natural logarithm of base 10. It is defined only for positive numbers, for the positive real numbers, to the right axis. So in the right axis, anywhere you can, if you go to the right far away, it grows very slowly, and then you go left towards the zero. It goes negative until it reaches minus infinity in the limit. And the definition domain does not contain neither the zero itself, it only touches the zero from the right-hand side in mathematical terms in the limit. And the zero itself is outside of the domain, and the negative axis is impossible to define any logarithm. There's no way you can define it for the negative axis. Absolutely. So the definition domain is the half plane only, or the half axis. And if you expand the logarithm to the complex, it becomes even worse. But still, the negative axis is out. It has to be cut. That's the reason they call the zero is a branching singularity. It's not even isolated. It's worth. It's an accumulation of singularities. That's a mathematical expression dictated by the necessity of reason mathematically. But there's no way you can have squeeze that in your brain. There's no way. So the time as the absolute time, divine activity as a variable, start with the point of eternity. What's before eternity? This is nonsense. That doesn't exist. And this is stressed in the hadith. اللهم أنت الأول فليس قبلك شيء وأنت الآخر. You are the first. Nothing is before you. Nothing before you. The before you is a nothingness, which is an impossibility. It is impossible that there's something before you. And the same with كان الله لم يكن شيء قبله or معه or with him, but قبله is the best narrative form. Nothing is before him because the word before does not make any sense. But because we have usually imagined before us, they were our parents before us. So we think before can go, and it doesn't. It can't. It will come to the absolute beginning of time, which we call eternity. We imagine it as a point. Imagine it whatever you want. Point, circle. It doesn't help. It is out of reach of visualization, imagination. So that's the problem with the Mutakallimin approach for it. If you don't manage the time very sharply and very distinctly, you get a problem. You get in trouble. You'll end really in trouble. But contingency is easier to manage. But anyway, all of that is a matter of really more of metaphysical studies rather than. But that's the way to go. Contingency or hudud. Everything we see is contingent, and even whatever we perceive, even galaxies, even stars, and so on, are definitely having a beginning and definitely contingent. They could have not existed, but they are now existing. Before that, they didn't exist. So there must be some necessary existing being which brought that into out of nothingness. That's it. There's no other. And this being, we cannot ask who created that being because he's the creator. The question is empty. It does not make any sense because the creator of everything, but by necessity, he must be a non-created. Otherwise, the one who created him will have to shake him again, and then the one before that, and then it must end somewhere. And the one you're ending somewhere is then the creator, fundamental creator, the necessity existing. But this is obviously when humanity expanded the knowledge and so on over that is, Ibrahim is about 4,000 years ago, 2,000 years before Christ, roughly. So over the 4,000 years back, we developed this concept. Concept of limits and infinities and so on were not really cleanly controlled until 500 years ago. Before that, people were wavering and making mistakes. I think I mentioned tafsir some examples of that, the so-called paradox of Zeno, because he did not have to add infinite number, which is getting smaller and smaller. He thought that the sum will be infinite, which is not true. You have to do it meticulously. Final section, add that, and check it with the increasing number, and you see it will tend to a certain limit. At the time, these things were not yet developed, so it came with this paradox. But we know now better. We have these things that better control, which has been developed now all the way from first principles of axioms, axiomatic first principles, and then we have really now considerable. It is a good portion, I think, all mathematics, but a massive portion of mathematics established with certitude as being free of contradictions and connected with the absolute necessity of reason that nothing can have a contradiction itself, and that fundamental principles of reason are satisfied. Mathematics fulfill that. And the proofs of mathematics are really the prime example of proofs. Anyway, I don't want to go to indulge.
Professor, what do you think of some mutakallimin who said, I don't know if I read it in one of your book or different book, that some mutakallimin said that we can know the existence of God, we can rationally conceive that, but we cannot conceive who is Allah himself. لا تدركه الأبصار وهو يدرك الأبصار.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, it's not, you don't need to talk about Allah, that the things you see in the universe around you, you recognize the external of it, but
Yes.
what they
Yes.
are themselves in themselves, it seems to be impossible to reach. The things in themselves seems to be impossible to reach. Only the
And
one
for
who
Allah
created
Ta'ala,
them. Mhm.
and for Allah Ta'ala, the dalil for that is لا تدركه الأبصار وهو يدركه الأبصار
That's the
وهو
dalil
اللطيف الخبير.
from revelation, but I'm talking about from reason.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, we
Yeah,
talk about
from
reason. No, no,
rationality. Yeah.
revelation helps in that if it's a well-established, clean revelation. Yeah,
I see. Okay,
yeah,
excellent.
yeah.
Yes, wonderful,
As
wonderful.
hinted by this ayah. Yeah, that's for
Yes.
example.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent.
Carry on, Rash. Yeah. Rash, carry on. We'll finish that small chapter. Rash.
No, we still got a way to go. We've still got a few pages to go.
Okay, let's finish it. Yeah, let's finish it.
So I was
We'll
just in the middle of
continue.
debating with some idiot on the YouTube channel. I think he's a Christian.
Carry on. Let's have this. Let's go. Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Okay. Okay, this probably isn't in the context of hadith al-asjam, al-ajsam, the occurrence of bodies, but more fitting within the realm of imkan, possibility as al-Razi comprehended himself in other places, detailed here as following. So this is al-Razi. The second issue: those who are considered wise have agreed unanimously that He, the Almighty Exalted, is beyond coming and going, and there are ways to prove it. Firstly, what is proven in Ilm al-Usul, that anything capable of coming and going can't be separated from motion and being static, both of which states of being are created. That which cannot be separated from what is created must itself be a created entity. That which is subject to such motion necessarily is created. Hence, it is impossible for the eternal God to be like
And that's
that.
what Chris says, even going with events and motion and so on is a good way, but when you go to the beginning, you have a problem with the limit. That's what caused some problems with mutakallimin. While with contingency, you will not have a problem with the limit in that sense. It's hidden, but in a way which is better manageable. Yeah. Carry on.
Okay, yeah. Secondly, anything which
Razi is more mutakallim, so he will be presenting what the mutakallimin are saying. Carry on. Yeah.
Secondly, everything which is motion from one position to another must either be small and insignificant, like an indivisible part, universally dismissed by the rational mind, or it is something large. Concerning the large, one side will differ from another, making it composed of parts.
Yeah.
Anything that is composed of parts requires the existence of each part for the whole to exist, each being distinct from the others. Anything comprising of parts is dependent upon something else, thereby being contingent in its essence. All contingent things, in essence, require a determining factor or creator for its existence. Hence, contingency in this way is created, prior to which was non-existence. The eternal God can't be subject to such conditions. Third, everything capable of motion from one place to place must be limited, finite. Therefore, it is confined to a specific size. Reason dictates invariably it could either be greater or lesser in size. Determination of such arises from a deciding factor or specific case. Determination of a thing in this matter is by act of an agent with will. Hence, that thing born of an agent with will is brought into existence. The eternal God can't be subjected to such conditions. This is similar to Sheikh Taqi's limited, unlimited, I think.
Fourth, limited, unlimited, contingent, uncontingent, etc.
Fourth, if we grant that something capable of coming and going, presence and absence to be eternal, an ancient God, then we wouldn't in principle be able to deny the matter of divinity attributed to the sun and the moon. One among the sharp scholars used to say there is no flaw in the moon and the sun preventing us from claiming divinity, except that there are bodies which can be subject to absence or presence. If one allows for this condition to apply to Allah, why wouldn't they not also claim as such for the divinity of the sun? What would have obliged him to judge by proving another existence that claims to be a God? Fifth, that Allah the Almighty told us about Al-Khalil, Ibrahim, that he objected to the notion of divinity of the celestial bodies, including the sun and the moon, by way of his saying, I do not like things that sect. Here there is no meaningful setting except the notion of presence and absence. So whoever permitted the absence and presence upon Allah the Almighty, he has objected to the proof of Al-Khalil, Ibrahim alayhi salam, and therefore stood in contradiction to the reason of Al-Khalil, Ibrahim, which was validated by Allah. To respond, I would argue, the first proof as set out by Ar-Razi may face some objections, not so the second and third. Regarding the fourth, despite being related to the second and third, possibly more, it is demonstrative, notwithstanding Al-Razi putting its classification more towards that which is rhetorical. Further mention of the line of arguments is set out again in Tafsir Al-Razi. The sixth issue, Al-Ghazali theorized in some of his books interpreting the celestial body as being a nafs al-natiqah al-hayawaniyah, the animal rational soul belonging to each celestial planet, the moon as al-nafs al-natiqiyah, which belongs to each sphere, and the sun being al-aql al-majrud, the abstract intellect governing them.
That's
Abu Ali,
the cosmology, the mythical cosmology of some Greek philosophers. Later, it was developed, and the Muslims have take a look to that also.
Abu Ali ibn Sina interpreted the setting of celestial bodies and entities as signifying the imkan, contingency. Al-Ghazali argued that the setting of these entities demonstrated imkan, interpreting the wording, I do not like things that set, to mean that these are contingent by nature. All beings that are contingent require an effective cause, leading eventually to recognition of wajib al-wujud, the necessarily existent. No, there is nothing untoward in saying this, but it is remote to interpret the verse in this manner. Among the people there are those who attribute the celestial body entity to the senses, the moon to the imagination and illusion,
And
and the sun
Ibrahim
to the
did not
mind.
do a mathematical style proof. Say, I don't like. I cannot accept something who is set and so on as a deity. Deity must be omnipresent, essentially. Yeah. It must be. It must have relation to its creation or its servants continuously. Maybe you don't see them, but they see you continuously. They control you, etc. So that's just to the level of the sophistication of his time. This is really a breakthrough. Yeah. Okay, carry on.
And the sun to the mind. So there's just confused on that. In terms of the intending meaning, it is that these three perceptive faculties are but limited and finite, while the rule of the universe dominates and has mastery over them, and Allah knows best. So this is your commentary now. Following this, I would argue that the finite, limited, and constricted cannot be wajib al-wujud, nor necessarily existent. Hence, it must be contingent, temporary, and created. It is impossible for it to be a god. All of this requires closing off all matters, which would therefore include the following. Firstly, what exists in the universe of the multiple causes and effect, nature, systems, following creation, doesn't ultimately rest upon an answer to the following question: who is my Lord? This is because the core question revolves around who is al-Fatir, namely who initiated creation. Confirmation of this lays within the command of Allah, the Exalted and Majestic. He says in the following verses, indeed two in many others. Say, travel throughout the earth and see how he brings life into being, and he will bring the next life into being. Allah has power over all things. قل سيروا في الأرض فانظروا كيف كان بدأ الخلق ثم
بدأ الخلق.
That's too small. And it is to him you shall return. All that is a true promise from Allah. It was he who created you in the first place, and he will do so again, so that he may justly reward those who believe and do good deeds. But the disbelievers will have a drink of scalding water and agonizing torment, because they persistently disbelieved. Next ayah, ask them, can any of your partner gods originate creation, then bring it back to life again in the end? Say, it is Allah that originates creation and then brings it back to life. So how can you be misled? Next, who is it that creates life and reproduces it? Who is it that gives you provision from the heavens and the earth? Is it another God besides Allah? Say, show me your evidence if what you say is true. Allah brings creation into being. In the end, He will reproduce it, and it is Him you will be, and it is to Him you will be recalled. He is the one who originates creation and will do it again. This is even easier for Him. He is above all comparison in the heavens and the earth. He is the Almighty, the All-Wise.
Mhm.
So these verses are Quran 29:21, Quran 10:4, 10:34, 27:64, 30:11, 30:27. So continuing with your statement. Secondly, the universal cosmic proof of the existence of Allah and His oneness is the correct proof. Third, all upon which Ibrahim alayhi salam pondered above over were reflections upon the dominion of the heavens and earth, a critical examination of factual matters which at casual glance, would seem to only relate to certain straightforward acknowledgements and beliefs. The statement which Ibrahim alayhi salam made, I disown all that you worship besides Allah, 678, thus can only mean one of two things. A, I totally disbelieve in your supposed other gods, denying their existence outright. They are nothing but myths, mental constructs, and phantasms with no existence in reality. Or B, or it is B, if some of them exist outside the realm of imagination, I completely deny their attributed divinity. They don't possess the qualities which the people claim they do. Hence, shirk then is exclusively to make another god alongside Allah, as has been set out quite exhaustively. Fourth, and without doubt, the Asnam are with certitude and without doubt included in the disavowal of all false gods, which Ibrahim alayhi salam declared. Moreover, this verse provides a further definitive proof that the Asnam, which were worshipped by Ibrahim's people, were not just statues made of stones, as these existed in front of everyone. No one can deny their existence except the insane. So therefore they are nothing except a replacement on behalf of or acting in the place of those supposed heavenly celestial beings, the stars, the moon, the sun, and similar bodies or entities. There is a possibility that the Asnam were symbols, tangible objects or dwellings, or even instruments of communication with the supposed divine beings that they represented. A full discussion upon the nature of the Asnam and Awthan is set out in the previous volume to this series. Lastly, to conclude, Allah is Al-Fatir, the originator and creator and the initiator. He is the one who initiated all of creation, including the creation of mankind. Thus, the debate initiated from the West about the theory of evolution and origin of species becomes meaningless. Even if there was basis to the line of argument, it exists only to disprove certain Judeo-Christian myths from the Old Testament. Regretfully, some of those have crept into Islamic thought over the ages.
Mhm.
Okay, so that concludes this chapter.
Mhm.
If anyone
What's
wants
the time now?
The time is 16 minutes past 10. We've had a good 2 hours.
Enough. We'll stop here. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, anyone wants to say anything?
Yeah, Professor, regarding قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ, when Allah said, say, wander in earth and see how the creation was created, there is a very good plausibility that this is indeed a saying of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and
Yeah,
I
it
will
can
tell
be.
you.
I'm not denying that it can be, but I say most likely it's switching the scene.
I see, I see.
And then the Prophet is addressed, and then yeah.
Okay, so perhaps this particular ayah, قُلْ سِيرُوا, say ya Muhammad, سِيرُوا في الأرض, is addressed to Muhammad. But the previous ayah, don't forget the previous ayah,
Oh yeah,
أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا كَيْفَ يُبْدِئُ اللَّهُ الْخَلْقَ ثُمَّ يُعِيدُهُ. This is Ibrahim is saying. So haven't they seen how Allah created the creation? And where is my evidence for that? فما كان جواب قومه إلا أن قالوا اقتلوه أو حرقوه. I'm arguing that the letter fa is for sequential and
no doubt about that. But
and
this
tataber.
doesn't prevent that you have a scene and separating with another scene and then going back to that scene. This is a way where movies are sometimes working also. Yeah.
Because Allah did not say وما كان جواب قومه, so there's like a
no
gap.
problem. No, I'm having a problem with any of that, but it doesn't exclude this one that's قل, unless there's a reading of قال. But why قال here in mid? You should be also alert The argument will continue. أرأيتم وكذا سيروا في الأرض say قل. But someone could say Allah is telling Ibrahim at that junction, قل, say. That's also possible. I'm not saying it's not impossible. I say that it's very well possible that both are. But we have examples where really we have this insight. For example, in Surah Al-Araf, when he says Musa is asking for a prophet and so on, according to Old Testament, and say عذابي يصيب من يشاء ورحمته سيكتبها الذين يؤمنون إلى آخره النبي الأمي الذين مكتوب عليه. Then Allah said قل يا أيها الناس إن رسول إليكم جميعا. That's for Muhammad for certainty.
Absolutely.
That's ومن قوم موسى كذا 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 كذا. So it can be. Just stop there, and this is very important. Tell the people now, before we continue the story, change the scene, curtain closed, curtain open to another scene, and curtain closed and back to the past. This is an art of representation which has been perfected in movies, flashback and flash forward.
Absolutely.
Flashback. That's it.
But I totally agree with you. But I'm arguing also that notice that it's not wama. He did not use wow. He used fama. Fama tatabar, sequential, and is related to the previous. So it's connected to the previous one. It's not wow. There's a time gap.
Definitely, it's connected to the issue of Ibrahim. فما كان يجاوب قومه. Which قوم you're talking about? قوم Ibrahim. There's no doubt about it. But this does not prevent from inserting something addressing the messenger of Allah. By this occasion, Ibrahim is talking to his people, and you, Muhammad, say this also. Exactly. It's very difficult to recognize that Ibrahim was telling his people, that's not in the scope of what Ibrahim could have addressed his people. There was absolutely no reason at the time to address this way. Here, after Muhammad, is the final revelation, and Allah telling Muhammad, tell the people, سيروا في الأرض فانظروا كيف بدأ الخلق. How the creation has started. Go in earth and take a look. You will see indication on earth how the creation on earth started, and also the creation of heaven. There are traces on earth. From there you go bit by bit until you go to the Big Bang.
I see. So yes,
only by doing geology and geophysics and so on first, and then from there you go. That's the way to do that. Not by speculation or following the philosophers. If you want to see the creation story, how it is.
I mean, I totally agree that it could be addressed for Muhammad, but because Ibrahim, when he rationalized the existence of God, he looked at his at his creation, like who created this.
That's what the first sentence he tells. Read the ayahs from the beginning. They will see. That's what he addressed. But this insertion, siru fil ard, go in the earth and do. This instruction for all humanity up to the end of time. That's the way to do science.
Okay.
That time is كيف بدأ الخلق. Who is asking about كيف بدأ الخلق? No. Look at heaven. Who is the possible creator? Is the one necessarily existing, the faraway one. Not these things. And then Muhammad add that more to the people. To that, it's not only who is the creator that is necessarily existing. That's proven. There should be no doubt. Another person will say, "Afillahi shakkun fatir as-samawat." Is there doubt about the God is the creator of the heavens and earth, the initiator? There should be no doubt. But how the creation started, how it started, how it did progress, siru fil ard. Don't speculate. Go and siru in ard. Dig the earth. Go from islands, see the evolution and so on. And they mentioned when we came to this ayah, I think I don't know which surah it is, I mentioned that Muslims did not respond to that properly, but Darwin did it. He went through the earth and compared things in islands to main continents and started the theory of evolution. We should have done ahead of him. But instead they relied on some kind of imaginary mythical stories in the Old Testament, which are contradictory anyway.
By the way, regarding Old Testament, today you said that when Abraham said, "Oh Allah, show me how can you create the dead birds?" You said that it was later after he migrated. Is it right?
Most likely.
My question is, why did you say that? Is it because there's no mountains?
No, because before that he said the dispute with Ibrahim and his Lord and the king said, "I give life and death," and so on. Ibrahim was fed up, but okay, let's bring the sun from the east from the west, from the east, and then أو كالذي مر على قرية. These examples how resurrection is possible and who gives life and death. أو كالذي مر على قرية وإذ قال إبراهيم ربي أرني كيف تحيي الموتى. All of this in that context. It does not seem to be the context of his people. In the context of reviving the dead. Who revives the dead? In Surah Al-Baqarah. That's
because notice, because notice
I don't think it's even in the Old Testament. I don't think the story is in the Old Testament.
I see. Okay. Okay. Because notice that if it's true that Ibrahim is in Ur, South Iraq, there's no mountains at all. Perhaps some small hills, but because it's a flat terrain. So this story could not have been happened.
That's most likely either in Palestine, there are some mountains, or even in near Mecca and so on.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I reached this conclusion similarly to you.
Because most of his dwelling in Palestine was south of Hebron, and I think it's relatively flat. There may be small mountains here and there, but definitely in Ur and so on, it's flat.
It's flat.
It's flat. It's a low plain and flat.
Absolutely.
Not even barely anything which could be called hill even. Not even hill.
Yes,
completely flat.
Okay. Yes, that's excellent.
Interesting side things, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's very interesting. Okay, Jazakallah khair. Barakallah fiikum.